Hello, journalism class. Welcome back. Today we're going to continue our discussion about television broadcasting, and we're going to learn some more specific details about two roles in the broadcast newsroom: the assignment editor and the executive producer. And so your pun of the day: light travels faster than sound. That's why some people appear bright until you hear them speak. So your purpose and learning targets, again, our purpose is to identify the roles of a TV news organization, what television broadcasters consider news. Also, you can be an effective broadcast journalist. So we're trying to identify the roles of a TV news organization, define news according to television. We kind of talked about that last time. And so these were some of the typical TV station departments: production, where they make commercials, where they make the promos that you see, touting different shows. The promotion department certainly works with the production department, but they also get out in the community and create advertising, whether that be on the internet or in newspapers, billboards, etc. Engineering keeps everything going. Sales, they sell the advertising or other promotions. Programming decides what is on the air and when, and they might have to make adjustments to the schedule for breaking news or for sports and things. Accounting, making sure they understand how much money's coming in and how much money they're using. And then, of course, management kind of overarches everything. So we looked at this newsroom organization and structure last time. The news director is at the top. We're going to go over greater details about who they are. Then you have the anchors. The anchors are kind of on this left side, which is what you see. Kind of these people kind of deal with the production side of the actual broadcast. The executive producer is in charge of a particular broadcast, as you'll see, whether it be the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, the 5 o'clock news. And then you have producers who are out in the field helping reporters and photojournalists. They set up the interviews. They also edit many times the stories. Over here on the right side, this is really behind the scenes. You have the assistant news director who works with the news director, trying to figure out what stories need to be told, what stories need to be covered. The assignment editor, you're going to learn more about that role. And then, of course, reporters and photographers. So again, our two main learning targets today are to identify the roles and responsibilities of the assignment editor and the executive producer, but all the roles as well. So the news director is like that news editor at a newspaper, okay? They're in charge of all the news that comes out of that broadcast organization. So they're going to manage reporters. They're the boss. They're going to evaluate whether they're doing a good job or a bad job. They're going to evaluate the photojournalists and the producers, the executive producers. They're responsible for all those people. So they're going to direct them to stories and discuss story ideas. They also are a management role. Anytime you're dealing with management, you're dealing with a budget. You have to recognize how much money you have to spend, whether to send people across the country to cover a story or to use a satellite truck, which costs a lot of money, or to use lots of live shots, things like that. They direct what they're going to focus on. They also brainstorm different topics that they might have, whether it be investigative journalism or consumer reviews, things like that. And so they're going to also ensure journalistic integrity is kept. Now we have the executive producer, which is one of the people we're going to spotlight here in a minute. They're in the control room during the program. They're calling the shots in terms of what camera angle to take at times. They're going to approve program content. You'll see in the video that they will actually decide which stories they're going to take. And they're going to make sure that one of the most important challenges is to make sure they're on time. Usually they're in charge of about a 30-minute block, sometimes an hour. And in that 30 minutes, there's only 20 minutes of content. The other 10 minutes are commercials. And so they got to make sure they're not too heavy, which means they have too much content, or they're not too light, which means they don't have enough. The producers, as we said, are on site and in the field. They edit the packages many times. A producer is usually only at some of the bigger markets, like in New York, Chicago, and Philly, Los Angeles, San Francisco, things like that, places like that. But they'll actually edit the package, which is the story, where the producer, the photojournalist, the reporter go out in the field. They interview lots of people. They take lots of different shots. They get a lot of natural sound, things like that. Well, they're going to help tell that story by editing it. They might even help write the script. They'll set up interviews, as we talked about. They're going to work as a team with the reporter and photojournalist. And it's not generally considered a management track position. They're not really managing the reporter and the photojournalist as much as they are a team player behind the scenes. So one of the other jobs is the assignment editor. And we talked about the assignment editor, well, does exactly that. They assign stories. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a break here. You're going to click, you'll see this in Schoology. There's a link to Assignment Editor Spotlight. It looks like this. And this was an article from a magazine called The Communicator from the Radio and Television News Directors Association. And so I want you to read about what the assignment editor does, okay? Because all these roles need a journalism degree. Okay, so I want you to identify specific details. What are the pros and cons? How much money do they make? And this is a little bit outdated, but still it's pretty much on target. And why is it a vital role in the newsroom? Okay, so some of the keys that you should have recognized here is this is a very demanding job. This person is listening to radio scanners, police scanners, police and fire scanners. They're watching the news all the time. Okay, it says right here they manage scanners, manage news crews, make beat checks. So they're gonna, know people. You may be at City Hall or in sports teams and so forth, and talk to their sources. Okay, it says there's no glamour, there's no the pressures are intense because you have to make snap decisions and judgment calls. You got to decide whether that fire you heard about is worth sending people out there to go cover it. Okay. It talks about that they have 27 minutes of terror every day, which can be the length of the newscast. If it's, it's usually not quite that long. I'm surprised they said that, but it's a very difficult job. You read a lot about the stress that is involved with it. It says to many, it's not worth it. The pay is only maybe $30,000 a year, and as low as $16,000 to $75,000. Now that's 19 years old, so maybe add another 10 grand to that because of inflation, but still, that's not a whole lot. And this is something that every news department needs to have, even the smallest ones. Okay, and it's interesting. They talk about how important the role is, that schools aren't necessarily training people to do it. It is an entry-level position, but it's a very important position because you are determining what news. You're the first gatekeeper. You're finding out about news, whether from those radio scanners or from what you see other people doing, or what comes across the internet, what comes across Facebook and Twitter and so forth, and for a variety of different content areas. Okay, so it's a very difficult job. And you face a lot of challenges because if it's breaking news in particular, that's one of the most difficult things. You got to help make that decision with the news director and the assistant news director and so forth. And you've got to know information to send people out there. So it's a very interesting job. But again, I highlight that because it is a job where you need to have some journalistic integrity. You need to understand what is news. So you do need that journalism background. Now we're going to switch gears and take a look at the executive producer. And again, the executive producer is somebody who is running an actual news broadcast. Okay, and when you hear this term executive producer, you'll see this in films. And this is usually somebody that is paying a lot of money for the film. They're way behind the scenes. They might have a vision that they give to the directors and things like that. So the term executive producer has a lot of different roles, depending upon what media outlet you are discussing. So your job here is to create a list of 3 things that a producer does and create a list of 3 challenges that the producer faces.
Depend on up-to-date news. To get the newest stories to the public, news producers and reporters must always stay on around the world.
Between producing a live local newscast and caring for her young son, Keiko Johnson's life is a juggling act. She spends her days working with a staff of reporters and other news producers to collect stories she feels her audience will benefit from. It's a responsibility she takes seriously, and one that keeps her on her toes as that all-important deadline approaches.
I need 6 in now. I don't care if it's too long. You gotta get it in. Bye.
You ready for some breakfast? Yeah. That sounded like a yes.